The banana skin lies ultimately in a few areas. First, Buriram. They are tricky opponents. The 2 goalless draws and the narrow loss reflect the closeness in the level of competition between these 2 top Southeast Asian teams in AFC Champions League elites, so it's always going to be a feisty affair. Secondly, the Japanese clubs. Vissel and Sanfrecce, they are very experienced, they are no pushovers in the Asian stage. But Makedia Salvia are making their debut, and with them in unfamiliar territory playing on both fronts, it is an opportunity for Johor to take 3 points when they take on Makedia Salvia at home when the dates are announced. Then the Chinese clubs. They will need to get points off the 2 Shanghai teams, Shanghai Shenhua and Shanghai Port, and possibly take 1 point away in Chengdu to consolidate a solid points total, to set up a good finish so that they will avoid playing a Japanese club in the knockout stage. And if they can avoid that, and if they can avoid playing Buriram, if Buriram also join them in the party, then I guess the prospects of the Southern Tigers moving to the quarterfinals is good. Johor Darul Takzim's ambitions to break the round of 16 ceiling in this season's 2025-2026 AFC Champions League Elite face a stern test as they learn of their opponents in the league stage East Zone draw in Kuala Lumpur on the 15th of August. This time round, they would avoid Korean clubs in totality in the first phase, but instead of the Koreans, the Japanese clubs are coming for them. Last year's J1 League champions and Emperors Cup winners Vissel Kobe, J1 League runners-up Sanfrecce Hiroshima, and surprise third place finishers Makedia Zelva join the Shanghai duo of Shanghai Shenhua and Shanghai Ports, Chinese debutants Chengdu Rongchen, A-League men's runners-up Melbourne City, and the team that eliminated them in the round of 16 last season, Thai quadruple champions Buriram United. And unlike last season when they had only the Koreans and the Chinese clubs to contend with for the bulk of their opponents, the entry of the Japanese clubs provides a stern test for Cisco Nunez Southern Tigers. How tough is it going to be? Johor Darul Takzim fans, brace up for this uncomfortable news ahead. So how uncomfortable does it get for Johor Darul Takzim and Malaysian football fans when it comes to the Malaysian champions facing Japanese football clubs? Unfortunately, there is bad news. The really bad news is when it comes to Johor's overall record against Japanese clubs over the years in Asian club competition, if I include the one encounter against Vissel Kobe in 2020, which was annulled, which I'll explain later on, they had played a total of 13 matches, won only one. Their only victory against a J1 League club to date when they defeated Kashima Antlers in the Larkin Stadium in the 2019 Champions League group stage. They drew twice, once against Kawasaki Frontale in the 2022 group stage, and I think sometime back in the 1990s when they also drew against Yokohama Marinos, which is now known as Yokohama F Marinos. And for the rest, unfortunately, they had lost all the remaining matches. That includes the game against Vissel Kobe away in the 2020 Champions League group stage on the 12th of February when they lost 1-5 against the Japanese side that then included World Cup winner and club icon Andres Iniesta. And that result unfortunately was voided later that year as the COVID-19 pandemic actually caused a lot of rescheduling in the tournament calendar. And as a result of then what happened was the Malaysian government refusing to allow Johor to travel to finish the rest of the group stage campaign in Qatar. Johor had little choice but to withdraw, and thus seeing their only previous encounter against Vissel Kobe being rendered null and void on official records. But yes, Johor had one previous encounter against Vissel Kobe, and it was a chastening experience. And away chastenings in Japan, unfortunately, are quite common because of the huge gulf between the J1 League and the rest of the leagues in Asia, and that includes the Malaysian Super League. Even packed with experienced Spanish and South American players at their disposal, it is still going to be a massive task ahead. Certainly when they come up against the Japanese double champions at home. As for Sanfrecce Hiroshima, they've been consistently up there for a little while, and they had 6 members of the squad who helped the Samurai Blues to win last month's EAFF E1 championship in South Korea, and that includes their regular goalkeeper Keisuke Osako. So in this Sanfrecce squad, they had good solid local talent, and this is in spite of the JD clubs not having unlimited. They were allowed to make unlimited foreign signings, but Japanese clubs err on the side of caution, and thus as a result they will not splurge unnecessarily just to get a big name or a top quality former player who has played in the big leagues or in the major tournaments around the world, unless there is an intent to raise their international brand or to raise their international profile, like what Kobe did when they signed Andres Iniesta and had for a period of time Lukas Podolski. But that was as good as it gets. As for Makeda Selvia, last year they were promoted to the J1 League for the first time and nearly had a fairy tale finish to their season when they almost became the first promoted side to win the J1 League title. But unfortunately, a bad run of results saw Makeda fall behind to Vissel Kobe and Sanfrecce Hiroshima, both of whom eventually secured the top 2 placings in the competition. So that said, for the group stage, for the league stage, Johor are going to host Vissel Kobe and Makeda Selvia at the Sultan Ibrahim Stadium, and will travel to Sanfrecce Hiroshima to play at the Adeon Peace Wing Stadium, for which the dates will eventually be revealed in due course. But what we do know is this is how Johor are going to face against Japanese opponents and against a J1 league where they do not have the best of records. So when it comes to handling Japanese clubs, their best hope again lies in playing at the Sultan Ibrahim Stadium to capitalize on the tropical weather to their best advantage they could, and also to get the players in gear. And this is where, unfortunately, this season, despite winning two games in as many league encounters so far, what is pretty clear is Cisco Muno's men have yet to click as one effective unit, and that was in spite of making a few changes. They still had to rely on Arif Aiman to come off the bench to put Johor in front against Negeri Sembilan earlier this week, And Christian Abad, who was supposed to be the number 2 behind Shihan Azmi, did not have the best of games. And the defense remained rather rickety. The midfield wasn't as solid, so this was not as well-oiled a machine as it was at this stage last season, even though they had some decent results in pre-season in Spain last month. And when they are up against a top-class competitors from Japan, who are now the undisputed leading Asian football nation, as well as the J-League being the undisputed top league in the whole of continental Asia, and that includes the Middle East, even though the Saudis might dispute that with their big spending. The thing is, when any team comes up the top against a top team from Japan, home advantage matters. I'm not counting much on Johor to take any points in Hiroshima, but they have to, in particular, draw inspiration again from the 2019 ACL campaign, where they took on I think it was Gangwon or Seongnam. Yeah, it was Seongnam from South Korea, who, as a newly promoted side, managed to achieve the top 2 or 3 placings to get into the ACL group stage for their first and only continental campaign. And at that point in time, Johor were able to utilize on their Asian experience to hold Seongnam to a 1-1 draw. Gyeongnam to a 1-1 draw. And subsequently, the Korean club were unable to cope with the double demand and are now currently back in the Korean second tier. And in Makida Selva, who are facing this double duty of having to compete for domestic honours, they are currently 5th in the ongoing 2025 J1 League season. They are still okay. They're not facing any relegation threats with more than half the season gone. But when it comes to playing in Asia, it's a different matter altogether. They may have a few experienced players at their disposal, a number of quality foreign imports including Michel Duke, but traveling overseas, clocking up the miles, and also having to attend to player fatigue due to travel, due to time zone adjustments. These are real issues that Makida has to deal with for the very first time in the club history. It is uncharted territory. This is one opponent where Johor can utilize their home advantage to the fullest to take 3 points against them. Vissel are already seasoned travellers. They are experienced in Asia. The same goes to Sanfrecce. Even though a costly administrative error saw them lose the ACL2 quarterfinal against Lion City Sailors on aggregate, when it could have been a 6-1 overwhelming victory in the first league itself. So Sanfrecce Hiroshima, if they have learned their lesson from the administrative error, they will be a force to be reckoned with. They have already shown that in last season ACL2 campaign, when they were very dominant in the group stage and also in the round of 16. It was only that error that made them come unstuck and eventually saw them suffer a 1-1 draw in Singapore to exit on an aggregate defeat due to a technicality in the previous league. In this case, Sanfrecce, apart from that error, they were already seasoned campaigners. So this is not an issue for them. So for Johor, their best hope against Vissel and Makida at the Sultan Ibrahim Stadium is to get 4 points. 1 point against Kobe, although this could be a rather tall order, especially when Kobe are currently 3rd in the J1 League table. They are still in contention for the ongoing title chase, and they have the depth and the experience to handle on both fronts. For Johor, they'll need to get their engines, their gear in place, especially midfield, if they are to get a result, especially against Kobe. In Makida, maybe they will have some fatigue that may give inconvenience to the visitors. And this is the one game against Japanese opposition where the Southern Tigers can hope to record a second victory against Japanese opposition at home after what they had done against Kashima back in 2019. And if they're able to do that, then at least half the battle will be won in them securing a top 8 place to reach once again in the round of 16. Now I move on to the Chinese opponents. The Chinese opponents, especially the Shanghai Duo, Shanghai Shenhua and Shanghai Port, they are very familiar opponents to the Southern Tigers. After all, they faced these two opponents last season, and against Shanghai Shenhua, they won 3-0 at home on 1st of October 2024, and against Shanghai Port, they drew 2-2 away on the 18th of September last year. So, with the confidence given when it comes to facing these two Chinese clubs, Johor are at least confident of getting at least, I think you can say like what I am hopeful for on the Japanese side, but cautiously hopeful. I'm rather more optimistic when it comes to the Chinese side. But as I have also said in the Provincial, Cisco must need to get over these few weeks to get his players in working order, to work as a team, to click effectively as a team, to communicate effectively as a team, and not rely a lot on Arif Aiman to try to save the day. Because what if one day Arif Aiman is unavailable? It is already shown even against Negeri Sembilan when Negeri took that surprise lead that without Arif, for some reason, Johor with their expensively assembled squad could not function, which is a travesty given the investment the region of Johor has placed in the squad, and yet they rely so much on their local born player to be able to do this. And if Cisco is able to get these chinks in the armor sorted before the first league stage game in the middle of next month, then I think the two Chinese clubs will not be too much of a problem, although I must add with a little caution as well. Shanghai Port are currently at the top of the 2025 Chinese Super League season, with Shenhua currently second. Chengdu Rongchen, as I'm talking, they are third. But back to the Shanghai Duo first. Shanghai Port, they have gotten experienced foreigners, especially the Brazilians, who have delivered the bulk of the goals, and they have somehow filled the void left behind by Oscar in terms of their prolific goal scoring rates. But perhaps the impact from the playmaking may not be exactly the same. If Johor are able to shut the Brazilians, keep them quiet, keep them at bay from goal, in which I expect Adoni Zubair to be the first choice again for the ACLE campaign, then we can expect Johor to pick up 2 wins against the two Shanghai clubs. Then how about Chengdu Rongchen, whom they have to visit? Chengdu are playing in their first ever Champions League campaign, and they had actually defeated Bangkok United 3-0 to reach the league stage. But in the rather wider world of where they have to deal with the more fixtures, not just their ongoing domestic fixtures, but also the added commitment of having to travel around Asia, East Asia, and also to factor in the time zone, the fatigue as well. Chengdu might not be the same Chengdu who defeated Bangkok United 3-0 that convincingly to reach the league stage. And that could be an opportunity for the Southern Tigers to take advantage, to get at least a point, to gain another footing in the top 8, to reach the knockout rounds again for the third time. If they can do that, at least they have more than 1 foot into the knockout rounds for the ACLE, which will be a massive achievement in itself, and could potentially, I say could, although it's a bit far-fetched, bring a second Malaysian club in to join JDT in the ACLE. Still I already discussed these 6 opponents so far, but it is not a done deal yet. They still have to deal with Melbourne City and Buriram. But before I go into the last 2 opponents, let me touch a little bit on the overall record when it comes to Chinese clubs. Overall, it is pretty positive. If we look at the officially recognized records, 6 games played, 3 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses, 13 goals scored, 5 goals conceded. Even if you add in last season's narrow 0-1 loss against Shandong Luneng, it is not too bad. Even though it's like 3-1-3, it's still not too bad. So there's always that 50-50% chance of getting it right against the Chinese clubs, provided Johor are able to settle on the strongest 11 they want to field in the ACLE and keep Arif Aiman injury free. If they are able to do that, then they have as good a chance of taking some points off the Chinese and the Japanese clubs. Now, I will move on to the Australian clubs, which I admit information is, I won't say the information is vague. It's just that Johor until last season has never faced an Australian club in any Asian club competition. It was only on the 11th of February this year that they finally met an Australian team in the league stage of last season's edition of the competition, in which they won 2-1 away to gain a strong footing into the round 16, as they eventually did progress. And this time round, they are facing Melbourne City. Melbourne City are in the ACLE as A-League men's runners-up because the regular season champions, Auckland City, come from New Zealand, and thus, according to the league regulations, New Zealand clubs are ineligible to play in the AFC Champions League Elite or any Asian club competition for that matter. Thus, it is left for Melbourne City to pick up the slack and fly the flag for Australia. And with Australian clubs on, I would say, not at the same level as they used to be when Western Sydney Wanderers reached the final and won the AFC Champions League for the first time of asking. Adelaide United reached the final, and Sydney FC in recent, Central Coast Mariners won the last AFC Cup before it became ACL2, and Sydney FC actually reached the semi-finals of the ACL2. But that said, with all due respect, the Australians were not at the level of what they used to be in Asia in the last decade, especially in the elite level Asian club competition. So for their away game against Melbourne City, it has to be a win for the Southern Tigers. A win is possible, but they have to work for it. Depending on when that game is played, this is one of the 2 decisive encounters that could make or break JDT's progress, not just into the round 16, but potentially position themselves to play perhaps a Korean club in the knockout rounds, so that they can reach the quarterfinals or the final round of matches in Saudi Arabia next year from the quarterfinals onwards. So for that one, I think for Australia I'm covered. Now finally, Thailand. Buriram United again. Last season, JDT played Buriram thrice. One in the league stage where it was an ill-tempered affair at the Sultan Ibrahim Stadium where it ended goalless. Then, the round of 16 where because of Shantong's disqualification, Johor pushed up to third and thus had to face Buriram again in the two-leg affair. Unfortunately, they lost 1-0 at home in the second leg after yet another goalless draw at the Chang Arena or the Tanjung Castle Stadium. And as a result of that furor over disallowed goal that led to Johor's set exit from the competition, the Southern Tigers unfortunately had to pay a fine for the crowd overreaction, which, being there, I understand where the fury is coming from. The referees were not brilliant that day. They were not good that day. But what is past is past. Now it's yet another encounter with Buriram United, and they have made a few new signings but kept the core of the squad together. New Attridge is still there as the first choice goalkeeper. So is veteran goalkeeper Chachai Muprom, and you still got the Supana brothers. Supana and Supachai brothers. Then you also still have a few key foreigners who were there that helped them reach the quarterfinals of the ACLE last season as well. Durham Bisoli, Curtis Good, they're still around. So with that kind of depth in the squad, I expect yet another tough battle, and this time it's going to be away. Even though Dyongkus is no longer around, having transferred to Cerezo Osaka a couple of months ago, even though Lucas Crispim, the impressive Brazilian midfielder, is also no longer around at this stage, even though we do not know whether he's still going to sign a new contract with Buriram. And their long-serving goalkeeper Sribawa has already retired from the game, so there are a few notable changes, but the core has stayed the same. If JDT are able to get at least a point in the Thunder Castle Stadium, or Chang Arena as they now call it, then Johor will have as good a chance of making strong claims for not just another round of 16 appearance, but perhaps set up a showdown with a South Korean club. So for the Malaysian fans who are probably a bit disappointed that Jesse Lingard is not coming down to Malay Johor with FC Seoul, or Shin Tae-yong is not coming with Ulsan Hyundai this time, perhaps getting a good position in the league stage could see this potential matchup with a Korean club in the round of 16, and from there, who knows. But the banana skin lies ultimately in a few areas. First, Buriram. They are tricky opponents. The two goalless draws and the narrow loss reflect the closeness in the level of competition between these two top Southeast Asian teams in the AFC Champions League elites. So it's always going to be a feisty affair. Secondly, the Japanese clubs. Vissel and Savreche. They are very experienced. They are no pushovers in the Asian stage. But Makedia Selvia are making their debut, and with them in unfamiliar territory playing on both fronts, it is an opportunity for Johor to take 3 points when they take on Makedia Selvia at home when the dates are announced. Then the Chinese clubs. They will need to get points off the two Shanghai teams, Shanghai Shenhua and Shanghai Port, and possibly take 1 point away in Chengdu to consolidate a solid points total, to set up a good finish so that they will avoid playing a Japanese club in the knockout stage. And if they can avoid that, and if they can avoid playing Buriram, if Buriram also join them in the party, then I guess the prospects of the Southern Tigers moving to the quarterfinals is good. even though we don't want to go too far ahead and say, let's say Johor reach the quarterfinals, then who are they going to face next? We are not going to push too far there. But for now, are going to expect yet another interesting, intriguing campaign in the East Zone League stage for Johor Darul Takzim in the ACL E. I look forward to the dates when the fixtures are announced, and I look forward to catching some of the action at the Sultan Ibrahim Stadium.